Hello, I'm Morse Kochanski, Wilderness Living Skills and Survival Instructor, specializing in the boreal forest. I've been associated with Karamat Wilderness Ways for over 15 years, and we have regularly conducted courses there. 7-day course in the summer and a 7-day course in the winter. On two occasions, one with the junior forest wardens and another with the scouts, I was approached by these people, and they were asking what it would take to justify wearing a badge called Survival Instructor that was actually meant to be worn on their uniform. And what would they have to learn to be qualified to wear such a badge? Well, that instigated the consideration of a certain program that I called the Survival Instructor Trainee Program. And I pretty well graduated 2 groups, and maybe there is around 30, 50 people in the world that would have been recognized as survival instructors through the Survival Instructor Trainee Program. Now, the issue of certification comes up. I do not feel that I'm a certifying agency, but the recommendation that I had made in the past is that a student could take any course they figured related to survival, but maintained a well-made journal or logbook of all the courses, which would be endorsed by the various instructors. But it also occurred to me that as time went on, there was outlines of courses. And I put the one on under one cover. It's about 16 pages of text like this that outlines what I think a well-educated survival instructor would want to know. And the people engaged in this type of activity would take a highlighter, and everything they learn, they highlight out as they learn it. And when this 16-page document is totally highlighted, you possibly may qualify for a letter of recognition, where I write a letter saying that I recognize you as a peer, as a person that should be qualified as an instructor because you have followed this outline, this syllabus. And that's what this whole issue is about. And this syllabus, if it already isn't, will be available to download off of the Karamat website, www.karamat.com. Now, the outline, I call it a competency outline checklist. And so it defines the type of survival we have to offer, defines exposure, anxiety, panic, hunger, fatigue, thirst, chilling, sleep deprivation, pain, exhaustion. Usually results that a person subjected to all of these in a negative way is going to die of exposure probably in less than 2 days. And so in this document, it tries to present a rationale, a little bit of a blurb on what the subject is about. And so here are some titles, just if you're interested. The Tools of Survival and the Tools of Survival Training. That means the tools of survival are clothes, fire, knife, personal first aid kit that would have a signal mirror. But the tools of survival training are your navigation, your sleeping gear, your pot, your shelter, your signals, more tools, Minecraft pack frame. Essentially, you're a backpacker while you're training, and as time goes on, you eliminate that item as your knowledge grows. So you can build your own pack frame, so you can build your own shelter instead of carrying it, so on and so on. So that's why the first part are called the tools of survival, because you can't really build or manufacture your clothing or your means to lighting a fire. If you're depending on friction, a person knows how to light fire with a bow drill likely is never caught in the bush without matches, so you'll know what the challenge is. But anyway, you always have your clothing, your means to lighting a fire, and a knife on you, and the means to deal with basic first aid issues. Mainly because if you injure your eye, for example, if you don't have an ophthalmic ointment, then you likely are compromising the safety of your eye. So you carry something as light as ophthalmic ointment, it's on you always, and so on. Then it describes clothing and the important considerations, and what the fire skills that relate to survival should be. They're listed in great detail. And it means that each line in this outline, when it's highlighted out, okay, so it says here, how to use a magnifying glass and a parabolic reflector to light your fire. And when you master that, you line it out. Oh, you might want to learn how to light a fire with your firearm because you're caught without matches, so you take the projectile out of your cartridge and take the right steps, and you get a fire by producing a little bit of glowing cloth and so on. These are described. A lot of things that you do in fire, like bow drilling and so on, are not really meant to use under duress. A lot of those things contribute to your education and your refined knowledge that allows you to become better at your skill, but you realize that you're being a little bit off by considering that, oh, well, I'll light a fire with a bow drill anytime I want to. Oh, well, like I say, a person knows how to light a fire with a bow drill won't allow himself to be caught in the bush without matches. And if you're the type of person that causes you to be in the bush without matches, you're likely too stupid to know how to light fire with a bow drill. But at any rate, so you get the knife and what you should do to develop your skill. A lot of these skills don't come spontaneously. You have to focus on them and how to use a knife in a certain way so that eventually there's no opportunity of cutting yourself with your knife. If you don't go through this training process, your knife will make your survival episode that much worse when you give yourself some serious cuts. I mean, you shouldn't have endured because your training should have eliminated the possibility of cutting yourself to a certain extent. What is a survival knife? Well, to me, it's a pry bar that works wood really, really well. That means it's unbreakable, and it's meant to do a lot of woodwork, which that's why I carry a knife. I don't carry a knife to skin an animal as much as I carry a knife to help me light fire and to make the artifacts that I need to be able to carry on with a comfortable existence. What would you carry in a personal first aid kit? How do you deal with accidents? And what are the accidents? Generally, I would say that survival can be a matter of medicine more than anything else. Because you hurt yourself, insects bite, you cut yourself, you get too cold, you get too hot, you begin to suffer from lack of water and so on. These are all medical issues where your body as a mechanism is being interfered with because of some lack of attention or lack of what you should be doing to keep it working, functioning optimally. You get into the tools of training, navigation. You're very vulnerable if you let someone else navigate for you. Better tend to that early in your career as a person who's spending a lot of time in the bush. A good sleeping bag requires a lot of knowledge input to be chosen properly. And you're going to spend 1/3 of your existence sleeping. So the bag should be as good as you can afford, and the bed should be as good as you can build it. And we have all kinds of materials in the boreal forest that allows us to make a comfortable bed, sometimes more comfortable than the one you're using in your apartment to sleep on. The importance of water requirements under various circumstances. The physiology of thirst. Your pot and your water. Your pot is tied in. The size of your pot, which I recommend, is 7 cups. That's a perfect breakfast. When you are living you're surviving in the wilderness and under minimal food intake, you sit down and you drink 7 cups of water first thing in the morning, and that rehydrates you to optimal level, and then you function that much better on account of knowing enough to bring something that allows you to procure water and to measure it so that you have a clear idea of just what your water requirements are being dealt with. Shelter. What does it mean to make a shelter? What is a shelter? The axe and the hatchet, the saws. A lot of tools are very, very useful, make life very easy, but misuse can cause the survival episode. And generally, all these things are not picked up by a person spontaneously. Even experienced axe people are blown away by seeing a good instructor make a good axe presentation with regard to the approaches that you would use in using an axe skillfully. People may approach you and say, "Can you teach me how to survive without an axe?" Because obviously it's a cumbersome tool and it's a dangerous tool. And then I'll say, "Well, do you know how to survive? Do you know how to use an axe?" And they'll say, "Well, no, that's why I asked you to teach me how to survive without an axe." And I say, "I find it very difficult to teach you how to survive without an axe when you don't know how to use it." And you might wonder what I'm saying. But if you really get into this, you will discover that there's a lot of truth in that. Moving heavy objects with rope and poles, snowcraft. How to move with and without a heavy load in summer and winter. That means how to travel, how to walk, how to navigate, signals, signs, trail markers, and blazing, how to communicate to others, or how to read certain conventional signs. Maybe even there's a lot of merit to actually learning the Morse code, for example, because there's a easy way of leaving messages by carving dots and dashes. Then there's the hobo signs that are these things don't hurt for you to learn them, but they can be very useful and add a lot of quality to your experience in the bush. Radio is a part of your living and radio communications. Sanitation in the bush. Summer outdoor hazards, bears, cougars, wolverines, winter outdoor hazards, everything relating to cold, the deep depth of snow. You know, the most dangerous time that you may ever encounter with regard to hypothermia is in the spring when you are wallowing in snow and the lower part of your body is soaking it because it's warm enough for the snow to melt on your clothing, and the cooling action of a wet crotch is very significant. The hazardous nature of mountains. What you should know if you find yourself recreating in the mountains. Reading the weather, and it's important in your daily comfort. Survival kits, design and use. Survival kits, the more you carry, the less you know, the more you carry. The more you know, the less you have to carry. And a backpacker is carrying a marvelous survival kit, but it weighs 70 pounds. But if you can make 7 pounds of what you carry do the work of 70 pounds, we're looking at a superior survival kit. The mental and physical aspects of survival, the discomforts, and the problem with your mind having an influence over your comfort. I also include in here the domestic needs of wives, mothers, and children. We're not saying that men alone always get lost. Families sometimes get lost. And that families often recreate together. And they should also realize that the group effort has its disadvantages and advantages. The wild plants that are found in summer that are edible, useful, medicinal, magical, and poisonous. Here we figure that a minimum of 250 are needed. What do you do with plants in the winter? The knowledge of the fauna, which may relate from bears to voles. Bears, grizzly bears that are rather obviously frightening to the voles that will chew up and damage everything, and perhaps give you the hantavirus, weapons, traps, deadfalls, and snares, the art of fishing, the food quest, insects, provisioning, cooking, primitive tools and processes, Primitive tools and process to cut, saw, chop, scrape, split, abrade, grind, polish, crush, pound, peck, dig holes, and so on. It's an art. What I just listed, that's a 400-page book. But basically, some of these techniques we borrow from the primitive people because we find that there's a big advantage in so doing. What can be constructed mostly with sticks, poles, and cord? Natural crafting that's relevant to your survival training. It might relate to basket weaving, decoys. And then there's a list of, in an extended course, we can expect to construct many things like walking staffs, pack frames, netting needles, various cordage, many things that relate to fire, from torches to kudliks and so on. At any rate, we give you a rough verbal idea here. If you're really interested in survival, you would probably find the syllabus to be a very valuable in ascertaining what you might want to know. If you were just surviving on weekends and you're just a everyday survival, concerned about everyday survival, it's one thing. The list that I've brought up is something that is probably mandatory for people who want to call themselves survival instructors. And this stuff is not acquired spontaneously or with little effort. You have to make concerted effort. And then you have to realize that the amount of time you spend with an instructor is quite small compared to the time you should spend practicing your skills, whether it's in your own doorstep or a nearby piece of wild country. But I have to stress that knowing what you need to know is one thing. Being good at it is another. At any rate, there are many people that have looked for the Holy Grail in outlines, and so here is my Holy Grail. Do with it what you wish.